time of this recording. And I had a number of people from the UK reach out to me via social media messaging or email afterward. And one of the guys said, hey, is there anything in the book about anxiety and feelings of insecurity within the relationship? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no. I'm like, I mentioned it a couple times where, when things started to get bad, I sort of felt a certain way, or she sort of felt a certain way. But that to me was a missed opportunity. And he wasn't like challenging me. He was just curious if anything because he was suffering from it. And I remember that when I was sleeping in the guest room and everything felt really, really shitty, it got to the point where like she'd get a text message and I would just assume it was her mother or her best girlfriend or some dude from work that she liked more than me. And that's an insane thing to think. Uh-huh. But that every time it was, I remember feeling things like that, feeling really insecure and really anxious about what was really going on in her head because we were no longer connecting on any healthy level whatsoever. And a lot of people experience that. I just think in the kind of scenario I talk about, the person who feels invalidated and not considered and unloved the way that my wife did, she experiences it first. And then once that her apathy sets in, then we're like, holy shit, like this sucks. But they'd already like processed that and they've gotten to the point where like, okay, I'm beginning my exit strategy. I just haven't told them yet.
How old was your son when you got divorced?
Almost 5, like 4, but like really close to 5.
And how old is he now, if you don't mind me asking?
13. I don't mind at all. He's okay. 14 this summer.
Have you had the how come you and mom aren't married conversation in a way, like how do you explain? Because they still wonder that. They still don't, a lot of kids don't quite understand why you're not together. Yeah. And it's, you can just be like, oh, well, it wasn't meant to be. And I don't know what you say, but what do you say?
Yeah, he said something about it one time ever when he was really young. That he one of those sort of classic things that you like see on TV or read about in a book where he indicated he felt like it might have been his fault. Mm-hmm. And both his mom and I talked to him about it. But again, that was back when he was in kindergarten. The truth is, she and I have been so good at, it took like until 3rd or 4th grade in his elementary school for the other parents to realize we weren't married. We showed up at everything together, always. Like all his basketball games and just everything with like Cub Scouts. And we were always, it was the 3 of us. And so even though we weren't married, we were always together. And I think that provided a lot of security for him, knowing that.
So that wasn't confusing.
Well, I mean, maybe a little bit, but I don't know. He seems relatively well adjusted, but I don't know how to know.
Yeah, I get. I mean, you only know what you know and you compare it to. But it's hard because sometimes if you show that you get along so well and it seems so much like, oh, this is the way we still do feel like a family, and then they don't quite understand. Yeah. You also don't want the, dropping the kid off in the Arby's parking lot and not talking to each other either, I
think I think there's the possibility that different kids with different personality types would present more of like an emotional issue that we'd have to like talk about. He's like the chillest dude. He's so like laid back and cool about most things. He doesn't get worked up about stuff.
He's going to have an advantage with the ladies eventually. He's going to read your stuff.
He's a handsome chap. He's handsomer than I am, thanks to his mother.
See, there's that. All right, give a pitch for the book. Sell this audience on the book, what they need it for, what they can get out of it.
I think that women will find a lot of validation and perhaps insight into what their male partners, and this doesn't have to be for male-female relationships, but just, if you'll bear with the stereotyping, find some insight into what their partners may believe or may intend or may be trying to do. And I think guys will hopefully not feel judged, but also be provided some insight into if they're really confused, if it's not obvious to you why your girlfriend or your wife gets so upset with you about things that seem really minor, I truly believe the book provides viable explanations for why that condition exists in your relationship. That won't apply to everybody, but I think it'll apply to a lot of people.
Yeah, and there's probably a huge value in reading this before you're in the relationship or before you're married or before it's too late. Do the work. This helps. It's at Amazon and all the places.
It's on Amazon and all the places.
And collectively, I don't know if you can hear through the headphones, this giant Great Love Debate audience is like, he needs to have a podcast because he doesn't need you to talk about this stuff, and we would listen to his podcast. Thanks for coming back. This was fun. You're always welcome here. You have a lot of insight and you have a really good perspective. on it.
I really appreciate it. It's awesome to see you again. Thank you.
As far as us, as always, like, share, review. Please follow this podcast. That means a lot in the podcasting ecosystem. You heard me tout the great Love to Boat. That's not the only show we have coming up. April 21st, Hyenas Comedy Club, Dallas, Texas, which is one of our favorite venues. The Dallas shows are just nuts in a good way. GreatLoveDebate.com for tickets to that. Shoot us an email, greatlovedebate@gmail.com if you got a question for me about this, about Mr. Fray here, any of the other things. Because as always, at the Great Love Debate, we never stop making love. See you next time.